with women performing better than they do, I don't think are men who you would want to spend your life with, right? It's that simple. So from my perspective, no issues, but yes, and that's not just a cultural issue, it's a gender issue, and you will especially find it. I spent some time in Spain, in France, of course, in the UK. You will also find in those countries men who get extremely upset when their women outperform them. It's in a sense an insult, and that's very unfortunate.
If I can just quickly add, so two levels of response. The first one is that one of the things we learned today is that many stereotypes are wrong. So hopefully that gives you a glimmer of hope that maybe not all men are like that, you know? I'd like to think so. There are some pools of gems which you just have to be able to identify and locate. The second point is, I thought of a criteria in your due diligence checklist. So if that's important to you, then mutual respect must be there. Right?
Okay, last, okay? In your guys' opinion, right? I forgot the question.
Okay, you have 3 seconds.
Okay, last. Actually, let's say you love a guy, but unfortunately, the guy have all the criteria that you want. But one thing is, he did not support your dream. So should I suggest? Sorry, not me. The other one. Should the girl sacrifice the love, choose the dream, or choose the love instead of, you know what I mean?
Easy choice. Deal breaker, no. Next.
20 seconds. I believe when you're in a relationship, you have to give and take. Sometimes you have to sacrifice, right? Always. But the question is, what are you willing to sacrifice? If your dreams mean so much to you, then yes, deal breaker. But if you think that being with someone is more important, inner happiness, having someone who loves you so much, more important or will give you more happiness than your career, then no, not a deal breaker. Sorry. That's the end of it.
Alright, thank you so much, Ms. Nani, Mr. Salim, for your time and sharing with us your experience and thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Nani and Mr. Salim. I would like to now invite Ms. Rabrina to present the panelists with a token of appreciation. Our first panelist, Ms. Nani. Our second panelist, Mr. Salim. Can we have a group photo really quick? We'd like to thank the panelists for taking the time out to be with us here today. We are now on to our final session with the theme of Our Role. This session is aimed at raising awareness and a call to action session on family planning, career advancement potential, and initiatives to uplift communities. For this session, we have 3 wonderful panelists joining us. Our first panelist is Ms. Sumitra Nair, Director of Youth Community and Initiative Clusters, MDEC. Prior to joining MDEC, she worked in Satwa Management Solutions, TG Telecommunications, and Telenor ASA Norway. She participated in MDEC Tech La Femme meetup in November this year, which aimed to provide women with access to more role models and supporting women entrepreneur community in the technology space. Our second panelist is Dr. Hartini Zainuddin, founder of Yayasan Chowkit. Dr. Hartini is currently the CEO of Yayasan Siti Sapura Hussein, a not-for-profit foundation that works with the poor and marginalized, focusing on the needs of children, the elderly, and the blind. She is the founder of Yayasan Chowkit and served as the head of advocacy and funding as well as the outreach program in Chowkit. She is the Vice President of Voice of the Children, a local NGO that does advocacy work, law and policy reforms, and training on children's issues. Dr. Hartini is also a member of the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development's National Advisory Council on the Welfare and Protection of Children, and is a member of a number of national task forces, child protection policy training on issues of trafficking, stateless children, and the Malaysian adoption system, as well as on different initiatives on child's rights and protection. And our last panelist is Ms. Mona Abu Bakar. Ms. Mona is currently the head of resourcing at PricewaterhouseCoopers Malaysia. She served as Human Resources Client Relationship Manager at Pricewaterhouse Malaysia. She has over 6 years of experience in HR, mainly in operations and recruitment. Prior to joining PwC, Ms. Mona was Resourcing Manager at Bursa Malaysia Berhad and CIMB Group's London office. This session will be moderated by Ms. Nabia Anthony, Assistant Manager, PricewaterhouseCoopers Consulting. Ms. Nabia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So we have gotten a brief introduction of what the session will be about and who our speakers are. But I think just to sum it all up, our session, as discussed with our speakers, will be about empowering you, the undergraduate females of Malaysia, to empower the communities around you. So what is the role that we play in making sure everybody has the same chances as you do and as we do up here? So I think very briefly, my speakers will be introducing themselves and they just tell you about what role they play in the organizations and more importantly, what drove them to take on those roles. Can we start with Sumitra?
Hi, good evening. How are you guys doing? Or gals, should I say? Looks like we've lost about 1/3 of the crowd, perhaps having tea, so hopefully they come back in. As Nabila said, I currently work at Multimedia Development Corporation, and my role there is as director, looking at youth empowerment, specifically in the area of ICT related, right, areas. So the role, I suppose, long story. I've been working on youth empowerment for a while now. My previous role was with Digi Telecommunications as head of corporate responsibility, and there as well, a lot of what we did was targeted at youth, primarily because the company had a big interest in youth as its target market. And then prior to that, I've done some work on inner city youth and substance abuse while I lived in the United States for a few years. So my interest has always been this area, and I personally feel that youth are extremely important. Whether you're a girl youth or a boy youth, I think your role as youth are extremely important because you shape the future, right? If you look at the leaders who spoke to you today, they were all sitting where you are, right? And they have made some very important choices in their lives that have brought them to where they are today. So you're actually at a very important crossroads, and that's why youth are of such interest to me, because I like to be at that crossroad, and I like to hopefully be able to influence in some small way what that future is going to look for you and for youth as a whole. Now, why is Multimedia Development Corporation interested in youth, you might ask? not sure, how many of you know who is, or how many of you don't know who is Multimedia Development Corporation? Okay, Multimedia Development, one person. Multimedia Development Corporation was set up in the 90s, and initially they looked at setting up, you may have heard MSC Malaysia, and to cut a long story short, it's kind of like a cyber, creating a cyber world for Malaysia, and looking at the opportunities in terms of attracting foreign investments or growing local ICT companies. Now, of late, they've actually evolved in their outlook, and they look at various communities and how ICT, or what we call digital, plays a role in different communities. And the communities I look after is youth, and we tend to look at how digital technologies and tools can play a role in youth empowerment and development in the future. And that is, so hence it's kind of like a combination of interests that has brought me to where I am. And that's what we do at MDEC for short. Other than my work, I'm also a mother of two. I have two boys, aged 9 and 6, and I'm married to a very supportive spouse who has, in his time, allowed me to go away and work at long periods overseas, half a year, 1 year, and he's actually stayed home and looked after the kids. So I've been lucky in that I found a spouse who's been very supportive. In addition to being the mother, I also am pursuing my PhD in management. And I also continue to do some social work on the side outside my career. So we were just talking before we came here that as women we've got a whole lot of bandwidth. Bandwidth is the language I use in my industry. We've got a